We've got a couple of quick sessions coming up right before lunch, and the first of those will be Howard Owens of the Batavian, who is really one of the founders in this space, a pioneer in this space, and somebody who really helped Lion get going back in the early days. This was kind of your idea, wasn't it, this whole thing?
Yeah, maybe. Lion's Den started with a few of us publishers wanting to do something in Facebook, and this all grew out of that. But I guess I did kind of instigate it, so guilty as charged. So I'm starting my timer here because I know Dylan's on time, and so when this goes off, I'll just stop. I want to begin with kind of a caveat. This presentation, I'm normally not nervous about giving presentations. I'm a little nervous about this one because I'm going to be at some points kind of brutally honest. And this isn't going to be one of the presentations that, hey, everything's rosy and cheery. I am, I guess I'm one of the grizzled veterans of local online news, and I'll talk about that a little bit. And so this is not intended to provide a blueprint. This is my journey from where I started to what I'm looking to in the future, the good and the bad points, and my only intention, it maybe, is you take away from it whatever you take away from. I hope some people find it that there's useful information for different people who are at different parts of their own journey. So let's see, are we at the first slide? Okay, so I started in online news publishing in 1995. The guy by the name of Ron James was somebody I'd known for a number of years. I used to own a small newspaper in Ocean Beach in San Diego, California, and I knew Ron James from back then. And I was assigned a story for the San Diego Business Journal to write about what local publications were doing online. And I called up Ron and interviewed him for this story because he was with San Diego Magazine at the time. He was their first online editor. And we got to talking. I did the interview, and he goes, "Is this Howard Owens that used to publish The Beacon?" I go, "Yeah." And I said, "It's Ron James from Ocean Beach." I mean, I just never thought of him as like a digital person. And so I was kind of surprised I hadn't put the connection together. And he said, "Well, why don't you become our East County correspondent?" I said, "I got a better idea. Why don't I create East County Online? I've got a friend that owns these 6 weekly newspapers. Let's put them online." At the time, there were fewer than 200 newspapers with online presences, and there was only like 1 or 2 weekly papers. So we were really jumping out there quickly, and at the time, I didn't even know HTML. So I was just like, signed up for this task without getting the sign-off of my eventual news partner, even knowing that he would do it, and I didn't know HTML. So that was the start. But back then, how many of you were reading online news, say, in 1995? A few of you. So back then, there's all these newspapers doing online sites, all these local newspapers with this grand vision of now we can reach the whole world with our news. And that was kind of the focus. And I'm like, no, that's not how online's going to work. I've always believed that the internet can be a place where we build local communities. And in 1995, I really believed that. And at some point in doing the Batavian, I kind of reflected back on that and realized, that's never really changed throughout everything I've done online, from the different newspaper jobs I've had, whatever. It's always been about local community. And so I carry that through now with the Batavian. So the Batavian, really, it started as a R&D project for Gatehouse Media. I was a director of digital content for Gatehouse, and Mike Reed gave me the opportunity to come up with a business plan for doing an online-only news site. There was some people in the company that wanted me to do it in Corning, where we already had a newspaper. I'm like, no, let's do it in Batavia. The newspaper out there, they don't have an online site, and so we won't be a threat to an existing paper. For my own sake, that turned out to be a really good decision. Wasn't part of the planning, but I think if we'd gone to Corning, Gatehouse never would have let me make this my own business. So when they decided to do some downsizing and cutting and eliminating people in online, they let me take this over as my own business. So that's how I wound up at the Batavian. A lot of times you hear recommendations from business people to have strategic statements, mission statement, vision statements. How many of you have done that? A few? I haven't either. But I've always held two thoughts, two ideas about the business in my mind. Our mission is to answer the question. I never did a formal mission statement, but it's just always been in my mind. Try to answer the question every day, what's going on in my community right now? The web's a great resource for instant news. And that's worked really well for us, as I'll talk about a little bit. And then also be the champion for local businesses. Local businesses have always been besieged for a long time by the big box stores. Now they're facing the threat of, say, Walmart, of Amazon. And so they need somebody in their local community that understands the digital space, that can be their champion. And that's worked really well for us. Those two thoughts. So what's happened for us? Audience, we do 10 to 14,000 unique visitors a day in a county of 57,000 people. I didn't do any charts. I made this really bare bones. I didn't do any charts, and the chart I could have included, but my competition is no longer quantified. They're not in Quantcast anymore. But if they were, I'm sure it'd still show the same thing it did a year ago. We have about 60% more audience than the 100-year-old daily newspaper that covers 3 counties. We cover 1. So we did that on this. We do a lot of, as Joe Hyde mentioned the other night, we do a lot of scanner reporting. We're all about breaking news. As I've gotten more busy, I don't do this as much anymore, but it used to be, I'd be out in the community with my camera. City crews would be repairing a water leak that I just happened to stumble across, get a picture, get that posted right away. What's going on in our community right now? The feedback I get all the time is, like I said, a football game just last week or so ago, guy found out who I was. I'm like, oh, I love your site. He goes, you always have stuff before the daily. If I hear a siren, you're right there. One of my advertisers told a story one time. She was in the Verizon store. It was packed with customers, fire hall across the street. The fire trucks roll out and go screaming out. Everybody looks at their phone, and somebody goes, Howard hasn't updated the site yet. So, and she's like, give the guy a minute, okay? So we've done really well on audience. Advertisers, we have 140 on average. It fluctuates, but hovering around 140. We've been there for a few years. Local businesses, that's more than double what our competition has as far as local businesses under contract. So all of that is good. If you've come across the book by Eric Ries called The Lean Startup. He talks about vanity metrics, and I've started to view those metrics as kind of vanity metrics because there isn't totally getting us where we want to go, and I think I've rested on my laurels a little too much. One of the things we want to talk about in this, here is what is sustainability. So in preparing for this talk, I talked to some people in the industry that are involved in M&A. I agreed not to say who they were, but I'm like, if you were going to be involved in buying or facilitating a transaction of a local online news site, what would you do? What would you look at? And they talked about audience market penetration. How many people are you reaching in your local market? They talked about audience engagement. They want to see evidence either in your own comments or through Facebook or anyway that you're really engaging with the audience, that they are paying a lot of attention to what you're doing. Advertiser engagement, so you're getting a lot of advertisers, you're getting traction with your community, but they want to see other revenue sources, not just like retail. They want to see that you're doing events or marketing digital services, that you have some other revenue source that they believe has growth potential, and that they see a clear path for growth, that you're not kind of trapped where you are. So, and I bring that up, and I think that's important for you to think about. I wanted to include that because if you're thinking about this as a real business, you're thinking about what the future holds. None of us are going to live forever one way or another. Is your business going to be able to sustain past your either viability to do it or your willingness to do it or whatever. And so you might be looking at somebody buying you, whether that's another independent or one of the chains, or maybe there are people in this room that someday may be in acquisition mode. So are you going to be able to build a business that is sellable? I think it's an important question to keep in mind as you build your business. So are we sustainable? Are we there yet? Well, revenue, one of the key metrics, we've really been flat for 2 or 3 years now. We're not growing revenue. We only have one revenue source, and that's retail advertising. It's a big, big frustration for me and a big point of worry. Because we're trapped at the revenue level we're at, I only have 2 part-time employees. We do have 2 sites. We also have a site in Wyoming County, so I have a part-time editor down there. I have a person that helps me with our advertising. But beginning of the year, my sales rep left, and it's just been impossible to find a replacement, and that's been a real point of grief and stress. And again, we're too dependent on that retail advertising. That's almost our sole source of revenue. So one thing I want to talk about, what's the original vision? When I started the Batavian, the inspiration was to put all our stories on the homepage, no links. It's much easier for readers. They can just scroll down and decide what's important to them, what they want to read. Make it really easy for people to see what's new since they last visited the site, since we're primarily a breaking news site. And then put all the ads on the homepage, because people generally don't click links. They stay on the homepage if that's their intention to go there. And it acts as, when we have all the local businesses, and it's all local businesses, it acts as a really nice directory for people. And we've seen success with that. We get a lot of positive feedback. Our advertisers get positive feedback. So that part has worked for us. But I always thought, coming out of the newspaper background that I have, we had a lot of success, especially at Scripps, with jobs, verticals, auto, real estate. And I always saw that as kind of a potential growth. And also, I was very interested early on from doing the digital services type of stuff. And so we really wanted to find a different way of getting revenue. Beyond just shopping. So what have we tried? Well, with Shop City, we did Shop Batavia, which is an online shopping site, shopping carts, mailing lists for businesses, a lot of really cool services. I thought it could be a way to get us into doing more services for businesses. We did contests, a lot of like quizzes and stuff through Second Street Media. We did a membership program. Actually, I made 2 attempts at this, voluntary subscriptions, we call it the first time membership programs. We did a jobs vertical, a real estate vertical. We cooperated with a vendor that used to be in business and one of our sponsors, Zope, to do a dining menu thing. And we did, I'm just checking the time here. We did with them a loyalty program. None of that really worked for us. None of it worked as well as I hoped. And I think, like with Shop Batavia, just not having a product manager was like our biggest weakness. Trying to do it between just two of us just didn't work. Contest, lack of sale pressure, not having a regular sales rep all the time. The membership thing, I know a lot of people are really interested in this. I think there are 2 issues for us. One, that we made it too work intensive. So for the revenue we were getting, it just, I like the revenue, but it was just a lot of work. We created gift cards that people could get in their annual membership package. And then the other thing is, I think I started it too late. And I think this would be a takeaway for anybody thinking about us. Early on, people were so excited, and we still have huge fans, don't get me wrong, but there's just this broad excitement about what we were doing in the community, and we had so many fans, and after a while, I think there became a certain amount of taking us for granted. And if we could have captured that wave early on in memberships, I think we might have done better at convincing people, support us, help us. Jobs, real estate, so the verticals, I decided to get away from the whole vertical model, and we now do a site called Batavia's List, and there are paid classified ads on there, but at a much lower price point. It's much more just about self-service. And it's generating a little revenue for us. It's not a lot, but I kind of like the direction that it's going. For a small community, I think keeping it simple and dumping everything in one place makes a lot more sense than the vertical model. I think I was totally wrong about that. Weaknesses. So why aren't we growing revenue? What are the problems we're facing? I think a little too much debt when we started, maybe, so we couldn't invest as much in the business. This wasn't something we planned. It just fell into our lap, and so we hadn't set ourselves up financially well enough to take it on. My wife and I are, we're in our 50s. I've had executive jobs. We didn't want to live on top ramen, and so we've maintained a nice house, nice household. Maybe we're taking a little too much money out of the business. It's a Rust Belt market. People are really price sensitive there. It's a small market. It's never, like a lot of Rust Belt communities, it's never known a lot of great ups, a lot of great downs. We're never going to have a boom cycle there. That makes it hard to get rate. Hard to find help there, small community. I mentioned earlier, hard to find and maintain a good sales rep. And we can't afford at our level to pay upfront for a sales rep. We can only do commission only. The products I ran through, maybe we tried some of the wrong things, we just made the wrong decisions there. And then rising competition. I'm going to talk a little bit about Facebook. I don't really worry too much about the daily news, but there are other competitive issues out there for us now. Which brings us to dangers and threats, platforms. I really don't like Facebook. And I don't like it, on a personal level, because it's just all the trash that's on there. But there's also, when you look at it from a macro level and what it does for our local communities, it really does nothing. And but it creates a lot of barriers to our success. And I'm not just talking about, the distribution of articles. We're losing engagement to Facebook. I mean, it's great to show, hey, we're getting a lot of comments on our stories on Facebook, but we're not getting ad impressions on Facebook. And there's studies that show that people aren't necessarily as brand aware when they're seeing news on Facebook, so it's not helping our brands. Groups, it's not just that we're losing comments on our own stories on Facebook. I've just seen this rise of all these groups of special interests that I really wish that was happening on our site, and the fact that we're not able to provide that kind of outlet is a source of frustration, and I'll kind of come back to that. And then, for us, Craigslist was never really an issue. I know newspaper publishers have long complained about Craigslist, but it wasn't an issue in our market. But these Facebook groups for virtual yard sales and Genesee County jobs and on and on and on, I mean, that's just an outlet that Facebook provides that it makes our lives, I think, a lot more difficult and harder. And so Facebook is making these billions of dollars off all these services and really providing nothing back to the communities. And then mobile. Mobile's the future. Mobile's going to eat the world. Being prepared for mobile, I think, is essentially critical. I think, and I've been telling newspaper people this, you've been worried about the internet, you haven't really adopted the internet well. You're really doing very poorly on mobile. Your mobile apps are horrible, and you're wondering why they're not really getting the adoption that you'd like, because they're not great user experiences. You're just repurposing your content into mobile the same way you did with the web in 1998. And mobile is going to be the final thing that kills newspapers. And I consider it a threat to all of us if we don't have good mobile strategies, because it's, you saw the stats earlier, the adoption rates. I mean, and for me personally, I do a lot of mobile. I mean, it's just a much superior user experience. And I'll tell a little story. My father, I was curious how he would do. Now, he's a little more computer savvy than your average 80-year-old. He's had a computer for a number of years, done internet for a lot of years. But I bought him a Kindle Fire, told him nothing about it. I gave it to him for Christmas. And I said, you'll be able to read the San Diego Union-Tribune. He lives in Bakersfield. You'll be able to read the San Diego Union-Tribune on this easier than you can on your computer. I was like, okay, great. So he downloaded that, got started with that. Right before he took a trip to Europe, he was telling me he's got all his pictures on there now, his entire music library. He's an Amazon Prime member. He's got his entire music library on there. He watches movies on there. with no training, he adapted this mobile device. And, you know, the common wisdom used to be that, you know, older people have a hard time with digital. Well, you know, a laptop or a desktop that has really limited utility for the average person, they're not going to take the time to learn, and it's a little more difficult to learn. You know, Steve Jobs set the pace, was brilliant in that you don't need an instruction manual for an iPad, and tablets have followed that model. I mean, they're just extremely easy. So I think you're going to see more and more people adapt to these mobile devices. So I was saying the future is mobile. So what we want to do is I'm really trying to orient around mobile. The two things I want to mention, I've really become believing in building my own tech. I've done a lot of stuff with vendors, both at the Batavian and throughout my career. There are very few vendors that I really like, and I'm almost done. There are a few vendors that I really like. Broad Street Ads, where's Kenny? He's in the room right now, he's probably out at his booth. Best vendor I've ever worked with, highly recommend them. A lot of the tech that you see them adopting, he's taken suggestions from us, so that's been great. And I mentioned earlier, even though we're not using them anymore, Second Street Media have been really great to us. But most vendors, it's really hard to get what you want because they're building for a whole universe. And then I've done a lot of open source stuff, a lot of, we're primarily on Drupal, but I've done a lot of stuff with WordPress. Again, you're relying on somebody else to build something for you. When I was at Scripps as a Cold Fusion programmer, so in the fall I decided, after 12 years of not doing it, I'm just going to start building my own code. I'm building my own mobile app. I'm building my own, what will eventually be not just a business directory, but it's going to be what interfaces with our invoicing system and the entire way we communicate and interact with our advertisers. And we're going to provide a host of services, all these digital services stuff that you see a lot of other people doing. I'm trying to self-service that as much as possible, and leverage what we're able to do in relationships. You know, like I felt we couldn't really do that with Shop City because it was a system separate from everything else we did. I want everything wedded together. I want to own the own tech and the data so we can quickly adjust to opportunities and build exactly what we think we want and own all those relationships. I don't want Facebook owning the relationship with my readers and my advertisers. I want to own that. I'm going to fight hard to do that. I think the only way to do that is to own my own tech. So that's where I've been through, where I've arrived at, what my current thinking is today. I think what I'm talking about at the end may sound really crazy, you know, own your own tech, build your own code when you're already working, you know, 12, 14, 15, 16 hours a day covering news and dealing with your advertisers. But at this point, I think that's the only way I'm going to get the business where I want. You know, there's just nothing good out there from vendors or anybody else for mobile. So if I'm going to get what I want and grab the revenue opportunity I see there, I've got to build it myself. So.
Thanks, Howard.
I see the first question there. Do we have time for questions?
We got time for about 2 questions, quick ones.
Uriah?
So it seems like what we heard this morning, instead of giving it all or part away, seems like instead of giving it all or part away to Facebook, Instant Articles, or Apple, whatever, we as publishers should really be focused on improving our mobile product ourselves and not not be so enticed by fast page loads and nice code, and we should just be doing that, right?
Right, I believe that. I think one of the things you got to be really careful about is not following the trends of the big and national media. They face different problems than we face, and they don't have the same opportunities. We are embedded in our communities. That's a tremendous advantage. And so when we start giving our distribution away for others, we're giving away one of our biggest advantages. Not that I'm saying not do that, but just don't depend on it.
One more back there.
Since you're going to be developing your own app, and since you know and love us all so much, is there an opportunity that you will be able to share some of that with us once you've done it?
Well, if you're asking about like sharing the code or becoming a vendor,
No, just to be able to do, would you, and I'm not asking for anything for free, but if you develop it, that it works really well for you, you're kind of a standard for us.
well, I do have a vision of creating a company around my own tech if I can get the investment to do that. I can't do that on my own, and I can't scale on my own. So if I'm successful, hopefully that'll attract some interest. What that company looks like, whether it's being a vendor to other independent publishers or starting websites elsewhere, starting businesses elsewhere. I think that's going to be a decision down the road. But I do think there's so much of what I'm building, and we kind of had this conversation last night, there's so much of what I'm building like so customized to how I do mine and what our business model is. I worry that how much is that going to translate. For example, with some of the features I'm going to have in our mobile app, if you're not doing scanner reporting, they're going to be meaningless to you. So how much is that going to translate to existing businesses will be a discussion to have when we get at that point. But I'll totally entertain interest.
Can you just tick off some of the things that you think a mobile app should do? Like
Not that I want to have everything out of the gate, but I mean, you got a camera on your mobile phone. It's a great news gathering device. Newspapers don't put it to use. You can do, I think one of the things I got to experiment with, because I'm not sure it's entirely true. I mean, I love notifications, but can we segment notifications around personal interest? That's something I'm interested in pursuing. I think that is possible from what I've been looking at. Location-based. We tried these loyalty programs. They weren't wedded into our primary product. We didn't really have a good mobile product. So loyalty programs and location-based programs didn't work when we tried them before. But maybe now that I've got the advertiser database tied in with the user database where all our content lives on mobile, maybe there's new opportunities there. I mean, there's like 7 or 8 or more different things that your phone does that you can tie into an app. I want to explore how can I use every one of those either in a news gathering capacity or in a revenue capacity.
I see more hands going up, but we are running very,
I
very
will be
late
here
at this
all
point.
through
He's going to be around.
I'm all through here tomorrow. As you can tell, I love to talk. So, just come grab me. And if tomorrow we're doing a group, so we can discuss those same issues again or whatever.
Thank you, Howard.